oh, I murder, people come after me and want to murder me back.
You what, mate?
But how do you know murder's wrong?
Murder's bad, okay? It doesn't take a genius to work that out.
Atheistic cultures that care for humans and the maximum good for the maximum amount of people are atheists that come from predominantly Christian cultures.
Oh dear, it looks like we're in for a good time because this guy seems to think atheists have no answers when it comes to not being an a**hole and that not believing in a god is absurd. Hello, I'm the SkepTick, the British floating circle that watches people make extraordinary claims, and then I explain why I don't accept what they're saying. Ethan Peterson, who hopefully is no relation to Jordan or even Planet, I guess, has an absurd take on why atheism fails. It could be that he just doesn't understand what atheism is, or that he's heard apologists say some things and is just regurgitating those things. To be fair, we all kinda do that anyway. But you won't believe what Efi has to say about atheists, or, well, maybe you will. So before getting to some complete absurdity, if this isn't your first SkepTick video, hit the like, the subscribe and the bell, and hopefully the algorithm will stop acting absurd. And a super thanks to those that hit super thanks in some recent videos. Fred Harvey, The Turtle Moves and Andreas. And a big thank you to channel members who get to use Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe and more hen emojis. Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe bestows leaves upon you all. More hen. Right, why do all atheist arguments fail then, theological mutt?
I've gone into many places, including speaking to Islamic groups, and asked the following question. If you stopped believing in God, would you go out and murder your neighbor? Okay, is it the belief in God that causes you to be moral or righteous? Okay, would you disobey the many aspects of the Ten Commandments? Murder your neighbor. Would you steal? Would you take your neighbor's goods because God didn't tell you to do that? Would you do that? And almost every time I do that, people point out no, because the reason that they don't do things, regardless of whether Christian or not, is because they have a rational view of how you can live in a society which is functional, where people make a social compact to realize that we ultimately give up some freedoms because we live in a society, we have to share that society with others, and therefore we have to find a way to live harmoniously. And all of that comes from a rational view of the world, and that's not Christian. It's not non-Christian either. It's just based on a sense of empathy and sympathy. And as I say, if you did not believe in God, if you ask people, if you gave up that notion of God, would you behave differently? Most people say no.
It's important to listen to that first, since the mutt is going to argue with what is just common sense, which already puts him on a bad foot. Please don't tell me he's going to say you can't conclude any of that without God, because that would be absurd.
Okay, so who you heard there was Lawrence Krauss debating Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy on which is better for society, secularism or Christianity. Lawrence Krauss is the atheist here, as you probably inferred by what he was saying, and he was making the point that it's not Christianity that's necessarily better, it's actually rationality, and this is evidenced by the fact that if people stopped believing in God, they wouldn't go out and murder or do harm to their neighbor. So therefore, he concludes that the reason for doing good must not be because God exists, it must be because we have some sense of shared rationality.
Well, it might be a bit of a stretch to say shared rationality, because there are some folks that I think don't think rationally, which is why they conclude there's a sky wizard or sky wizards, depending on which flavour of God they think is the realist.
Now, what's ironic is that for the Muslims, it's their very belief in their God that causes them to go murder people.
That God is also your God, mate. And Muslim extremists don't go around MDKing people any more than white Christian homeboys with a gun do at many of the USA shooting ranges. Sorry, I mean schools.
We won't get into that in this video. In this video, we are going to look at this claim and see how Christians can respond to it, and give you some points as to how you can respond to this if atheists ever bring this point up to you. My name is Ethan. This is Everyday Gospel. I make videos to help bolster your faith, ultimately unto loving the gospel, living and sharing the gospel.
Which gospel? There's more than one, buddy.
Okay, so just a quick review of what Lawrence said is that because Christians and Muslims wouldn't necessarily go kill people or steal from people if we stopped believing in our God, therefore morality is rooted in more than just our belief in God. It's rooted in something deeper, and he says that's rationality. Rationality in philosophy is defined as the quality of being based on or guided by reason, involving the use of logic and evidence to form beliefs and make decisions.
Totally not reading that from an article, huh? Oh, and he only started making videos on this channel in September of 2024. He's obviously at the peak of Dunning-Kruger, still learning what words mean and everything.
So, in essence, he's saying, oh yeah, if people see that, oh, I steal, people don't trust me, I don't have any friends, that's evidence that stealing's bad, I won't steal, I'll teach people not to steal.
Where did I don't have any friends come from? Now I just feel sorry for the dude. I felt like that was a real admission. Projection.
Oh, I murder, people come after me and want to murder me back, therefore murder's not good. Okay, I won't murder. That's kind of how their reasoning goes.
How is that hard to accept? I don't want to be deaded, so I don't go out deading in the hope that I also won't get deaded by someone. Which, given how some people hear callings to do some deading from their sky beings, the possibility of that never happening isn't ever at zero.
So the question is, does this hold up? And yeah, maybe in a micro level, in a very small community, you could argue that people can recognize that they have to give things up for the betterment of the community.
So it does work then. And if you get enough micro levels, they add up to a Mach 1. If all those communities work together, then you get the same outcome. Sans God.
However, there are 3 things I want to expose about this that we're going to go over in this video. Number 1 is that this argument assumes good and evil. Atheists always do this in a lot of conversations I have with them. They will assume good and evil. And the reason atheists can't assume good and evil is because they can't ground morality in anything objective.
Good and evil is just what you label as something that goes for or against the well-being of humanity. It doesn't take much to look at what's going on and to see what would help or hinder. Get rid of the things that hinder if you want that thing to happen. Simples.
You can't say it's wrong to murder people. So he's assuming that, right? When he says, oh, I asked people, would you murder? See, he has to assume that murder is wrong to even ask the question, would you murder?
If you don't know that murder is wrong, then you're a bit of a dummy.
But how do you know murder's wrong? He would say maybe, like I said earlier, because if I murder, someone will come after me and murder me. Maybe, but that doesn't make it wrong. It makes people mad, but people being mad doesn't mean it's wrong.
It's always frightening to know that people like this are out there. That to justify a god, they need to make out that atheists are these stupid idiots that go around deading and stealing and all that rubbish. Because they can't make sense of a sky being not being the one to tell them to not be an a**hole.
Right? So how do you know it's wrong? What are you grounding it in that is letting you know that it's absolutely wrong?
Well, he already said, but you decided that doesn't work because no God. So you want another explanation. Instead, you could just go, oh, well, thank you for not going around deading people. I'm glad you don't need a God to make you a decent member of society.
And atheists do this a lot. Well, they borrow our morality as theists and as Christians and then assert that other sources from them.
We borrow from Christianity. You can make decisions on what's best with basic reason and empathy. It's really not that hard, buddy.
So this argument, assuming good and evil exists, is a big problem because atheists cannot ground good and evil objectively like we can.
You know what that's called? You just made up a scenario that doesn't happen and said it can't work. We've heard it plenty of times as non-believers, and this is the final straw, man.
Maybe they would say, oh, the highest good could be to do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
That's what Goddos say. Sounds very biblical. At least in my case, I'd say, don't be a
The golden rule. Okay, cool. How about you don't use our book and our sources to ground your morality and while also rejecting our God?
No one is doing that, you wally. The only reason I'd use the Bible is for kindling or something. See how your God feels about that.
If you're going to use our book, our book came from God. So you got your hands tied there, right?
Prove it! Your God hasn't got a clue what's going on if that's the case. He gets very mixed up several times and forgets plot points and character arcs. I think it's you who has their hands tied.
In this case, Lawrence Krauss is saying that the highest good is that the maximum amount of people have the maximum good.
Each person values other people, tries to treat them well, tries to produce the maximum benefits for the maximum number of people.
And the reason is because we live in a society, people know they have to sacrifice for a society, so they're willing to give that up. And, in general, sure, people know they live in a society and they have to sacrifice small things to live in that society. But, however, this leads into my second point, which is societies are limited. What's good for one society doesn't make it good for another society in an atheistic framework. There are thousands of different societies with thousands of different ideas of how to live that they would all consider rational.
A society condoning harmful things doesn't make it rational. Some societies may have thought it was acceptable to bury their oldest and youngest sons under some walls.
For example, there's one tribe, I think in current day Indonesia somewhere, where a missionary went. The missionary's name was Don Richardson. He wrote a book. You can read it. He went to go preach to this tribe and found out that they are cannibals and they value treachery.
Now, I may be wrong here, but I thought they valued the power they thought they got from eating their enemies. You see, people believe up things, right? Like eating enemies, drinking blood, eating flesh. And that doesn't make it okay. It's still not helping the species. How's that hard to understand?
And so for this society, what's rational is to eat other humans and be treacherous.
They ate their enemies, and they were minding their own business, and some dude felt he had to go and convince them that his god was real. They probably should have eaten him. What terrible cannibals.
And they're not going to change because they think it's wrong. They don't have a problem with it. So you can't tell them, hey, that's not rational. They would say, actually, it is. And so what caused them to change? It's when they were met with the gospel, they got convicted of their sin, they repented, they turned to Christ, and becoming a Christian brought them to end cannibalism and treachery.
And if someone else had got there first, with the ideology that bald men with glasses should be thrown into an active volcano, who's to say that wouldn't happen? It doesn't prove that Christianity is the way forward, nor does it make atheism absurd.
And so for the atheists, right, they have no way to tell them you can't be a cannibal. Because, again, they borrow from our morality. How can you ground that cannibalism's wrong if God doesn't exist? If there's, how do you know? How do you know?
In the same way, I don't go and eat my neighbours. I'm not a moron. I have basic empathy. How do you know not to be a cannibal? I'm pretty sure there's nothing in the Bible that says don't eat human flesh.
Right? So societies are limited. That's the second point I would make. And moving on into our third and final point, this position denies reality. This idea sounds nice, that people naturally want the maximum amount of good for the maximum amount of people, but it's just absolutely untrue.
So you know what every atheist thinks, huh?
It assumes way too much goodwill and intent for people.
And it just makes no sense that someone could be a good person without a God telling them how to be that way, right?
People don't automatically value the maximum good for the maximum amount of people. That has to be taught. What they do is they grow up and they value the maximum amount of good for themselves.
This dude cannot be a parent. I have kids. I want the maximum amount of good for them. I learned that skill from my godless parents who wanted the maximum amount of good for me. My chillblains will hopefully not be because they saw their godless parents not being bad people. No books telling us what to do or anything.
This is why you have people who cheat on tests in school to get ahead. This is why people will lie at work about why they're late so they have a good reputation so they can get a promotion, or they lie about other things in order to excel in their business.
Wait, it sounds like he's speaking from experience.
Or just go drive down the highway at a busy time of day and go the speed limit and watch how many people are mad at you because you're inconveniencing them.
And sounds like you get annoyed at folks for driving at the speed limit. Are you okay, Ethan? Did you really make this video just to grumble that you're not allowed to speed everywhere because actually it's a little unsafe?
These are small examples of people clearly looking out for themselves and not concerned about what's best, quote unquote, for society.
So driving at higher speeds is better for society. Oh, right then, I'm getting my car souped up.
Now, in response to this, the atheists could look at all the great work people do, like volunteering at homeless shelters, feeding the hungry, joining relief work when natural disasters happen, and say, see, humans have naturally good instincts in them. And sure, there is something innate in humans that cares for others. I think that's from God. They would think that's just from rationality. But what's kind of confusing is that a lot of people who rush to help in times of trouble like natural disaster, what's hard is that it's not entirely clear where generational Christian culture ends and natural morality takes over.
Maybe you should look into that rather than saying dumb stuff on the internet about misrepresenting atheists and making absurd claims like non-believers steal moral grounding from a book of ridiculousness.
So an atheist might look at a non-Christian doing a good work in America and say, see, that's just them doing what's good because they know it's rational. And I would say, how can we know that for sure, right?
You do know that the USA isn't the only country in the world, right? You know that largely secular countries do good things too, or even countries of other faiths. It's not just Bible bashers that help folks. I mean, whenever I do something to help someone, I also end by bestowing leaves from the one true rainbow deity, Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe, leaf be upon her. That way, she will lick me in the afterlife jungle. Oh, what a reward that'll be. New Lisa t-shirts available now.
It's not clear that they haven't been influenced by maybe their parents having a nominal Christian upbringing or Christian upbringing, their grandparents being Christians, and everyone in their family for 100 plus years being Christian, raising them to care for people, right?
What happened before 3,000-ish years ago when people largely acted the same but without the Bible, because it hadn't been written yet? If anything, the Bible borrowed from regular human logic and empathy and repackaged it as their own, then claimed copyright on it.
So it's like, oh yeah, those good natural things could be learned, or like the good atheistic morality could be culturally learned things, and the culture learned them through Christianity. And so it's kind of like atheistic cultures that care for humans and the maximum good for the maximum amount of people are atheists that come from predominantly Christian cultures.
Because you just can't see any other way that someone could do something nice for someone else without a sky daddy to tell them. It says a lot about a person when they need a god and a book to keep them in line. It's really a bit sad.
Okay, so in review, the three things that we went over is that this argument assumes good and evil.
No, it doesn't. You're strawmanning.
Atheists have to borrow from theists on what's good and evil because they can't ground objectively what's good and evil.
And really, who can ground objectively what's right and wrong? I know that God is a subject, and so that makes its opinion subjective anyway.
Number two, societies are limited. So what's good for one society doesn't mean it's immediately good for the next society in an atheist idea.
Not just atheists, mate. That's a weak argument. If it's not helpful, it's not helpful.
And three, this position denies reality. It's just not true that most people care about the most amount of good for the most amount of everyone. They want the most amount of good for themselves.
There's only one way to find out, by asking every single atheist. Because I would say that the majority I know probably do care about what's good for all. Making up your own imaginary atheist to attack is less helpful than actually finding out.
All in all, if you don't take anything else from this video, if you forget those 3 points, one of the biggest problems for atheists is that they can't ground their arguments in morality objectively.
And neither can believers, so we're back to square one anyway. There's nothing objective about the opinion of a god or the opinion of what a make-believe being's opinion is, which is basically what the Bible is anyway.
They can try to come up with reasons like rationality, but they can't say with absolute certainty where morality comes from. And I think that's a big deal for atheists, and one reason why no one should be an atheist.
You mean it's nothing to do with not being convinced of a god? Or wait until I tell the atheist church leaders. Well now, the things this fella said about atheism was absurd. We can't be good without God. We use the Bible even when we don't use the Bible. We have no part in existing in reality because biblical-less logic isn't welcome here, or something. Which part of this did you find most absurd? Let me know in the section below. I'm going to SkepTick this as more absurdity dealt with. A big thank you to this month's top-level ticks on Patreon. Dark Ether Piao, Tamo, The Barely Bearable Atheist, George, Godless Granny, Addy Rockhart, The Enixes, Jakari, Elizabeth, Whiskey Tech Fred, Rick and Ray, as well as all the $3 base ticks and channel members. You can become a supporter on Patreon too at patreon.com/theskeptic. The link is in the description, along with links to all my other socials, or become a member by hitting the join button below this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. From me, the SkepTick, stay safe, keep thinking logically, and ask questions. Skepticism is the first step towards truth. See you next Saturday.